Remember the kind of voters that put Obama in. We call them low information voters. All right, and so that'll just and so if some of you voted for Obama, if you voted for him the first time, we'll cut you a little slack. If you voted for him the second time, shame on you. Mike Shoesmith, so glad you're with us today, Mike. Tell us, Hillary had an amazing interview this week that was kind of interesting. I understand you're up to snuff on all that.
Hey, I don't know about up to snuff. I'm working without a net here, guys. I have no notes in front of me, so bear with me if I struggle a little bit here. You're going to have to go by what's crammed into my mind here. So my apologies up front. But listen, it was a big day for Hillary this week when she had her town hall with CNN's Christiane Amanpour.
Uh-huh.
Did you catch any of that? By the way, you're probably too busy.
I did not catch that interview. No.
Well, she was interviewed later, almost immediately after, following that over at Fox News. But before that, she did a town hall meeting with Christiane Amanpour of CNN. I like her, by the way, Christiane Amanpour. She does lean liberal, but I like her style. But anyway, she did an interview with Hillary and took questions from the audience. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing right now, but there was two parts of that which caused me to draw. Now, the conclusion that I got from the entire town hall meeting was that she is very unstable, Carl. She's an unstable woman. Yeah. And here's why I say that. I say that because she was asked, because the audience members were allowed to ask questions, right?
Uh-huh.
And she was asked a couple of questions that were very telling, Carl, very revealing. She was asked, what about you're going to be a grandmother soon? What about that? What about that? Does that conflict with running for president? And her response was, well, I'm just going to have to go by how I feel about it at the time.
Good gracious.
Yeah, that's how she's going to decide whether she's going to run for president or not is how she feels about it.
Well, but that's how the progressives do life. It's all about feelings. How people feel. It's not about reality. Exactly. It's not about facts. It's not about a comparison of any kind of moral standard. It's about how I feel, and not just how I feel, but how I feel today. And I might feel different tomorrow. But you're concerned that maybe she's a little unstable, but at least she's married to a very stable guy.
Right, sure. Well, the other thing that she was asked was about if she could sum up how she feels about herself, how she thinks about herself, rather, in 3 words, how would she sum it up? And her answer was well, it all depends on how I'm feeling that day, you see. Some days I'm like, I speak very highly of myself, and I say things like, I'm great, and I'm wonderful, and I'm energetic, and I'm passionate, and I'm service-minded. But then other days I'm like, I don't feel so good about myself.
You sound just like her. How do you do that?
Is this presidential material? I ask you.
Yeah. And is this the one you want answering the phone at 3:00 in the morning?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right.
What difference at this point does it make?
Here. And that is, I was scanning. I have satellite radio, as you know, and I was scanning through the channels, and I came across the Howard Stern introducing Donald Trump as a guest.
Uh-huh.
I thought, man, this is going to be awesome, right? Because here we have an ultra right-winger being interviewed by an ultra left-winger, like ultra left-winger, right? Like, I'm not a Howard Stern fan, but he does know how to interview.
Right.
He's known for that, right?
Right.
So I thought, well, this is going to be great. So I'm listening to this, and listen. This was amazing. It was amazing. Now Howard Stern, now think about this. Howard Stern endorsed Roseanne Barr as president, and she had as her vice presidential running mate Willie Nelson.
Okay.
The king of the biggest pothead ever was running. They were an honest to God ticket.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so Howard Stern actually endorsed that ticket to be president. Now he doesn't have any party affiliation, so he's speaking with Trump. And listen, Trump, by the end of the interview, had both him and his co-host Robin Quivers, her name is. He had them both eating out of the palm of his hand. He had them converted. It almost sounded like Paul speaking with Agrippa, you remember? You almost convinced me to be a Christian, you remember that?
Right, in the book of Acts, yeah, the Apostle Paul, yeah, giving his testimony, and King Agrippa said, Paul, thou almost persuadeth me.
Right,
yeah.
That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
Of course, not literally, of course. It wasn't that momentous an occasion, but still, it was amazing. And I believe, and Stern tried to get Trump to admit that he's actually in favor of gay marriage, and Trump would not do it. He held the strong conservative line. And I believe, Carl, that it is time that we finally admit that Donald Trump was right in his Iraq doctrine. The Donald Trump doctrine on Iraq was right when he last considered running for president. Listen, Donald Trump would destroy Hillary Clinton. If they put up Donald Trump against Hillary in 2016, he would make her cry in the debates, I'm sure of it.
Remind me what the Donald Trump doctrine was about Iraq.
Okay, Trump said about Iraq, he said, look, listen, we won the war. It is time, the only way it is time for us to admit that we won the war. It's time for us to just go in and run the country, run the oil output, run the refineries, run the country, because these people are not capable of doing it themselves. And I was on an enormous military base. I can't tell you what it was. I was there this week. I was doing business there. And I managed to engage one of the upper-ups there, I can't name names, in a conversation about Iraq. And this guy is one of the guys who trained the Afghanis how to defend themselves over there. This guy is very high up over there in Canada. It was a Canadian military base, by the way, and that's about all I can say about that. But listen, I asked this guy about Iraq. He said, listen, ISIS will go into Baghdad. That's a sure thing. They're at least going to try.
That's what they're going to do.
Right, and he said that the thing with Iraq is, they should have divided that into three right off the bat. The Kurds, the Sunnis, and the Shiites should have each had three a divided land over there, each with their own land. That's how that should have gone from the start. And I say, well, listen, that only means they would have land to launch attacks against each other from which to do that, right?
Right.
That's what land means to them, places from which to launch attacks against each other.
Exactly.
That is land for them, right?
Exactly.
So I said, listen, this would happen. If we divide the land into three and give it up to the Sunnis, Shiites, and Kurds, they're only going to use that to launch attacks. And if one of them wins, they're going to use it to gather up forces to launch against Europeans and American interests. And he says, yes, but the only way to stop that, now hear me, folks, this guy has been to every major conflict in the last 20 years, okay?
Okay.
He said the only way to stop this is to wipe them out. The only way to stop the bickering amongst a culture that believes God is on their side, and they're so uneducated. He said they believe everything that the local guru tells them, the local imam, the local whatever.
Right. This is the local witch doctor. Yeah.
Right, and he said, we're not dealing with the bravest people in the world either, because they're very superstitious. He says, these people will go do whatever the imam tells them. And he said, when we were training the Afghanis, he said, we would tell a local, watch this door. He said the guy would watch that door. His best friend could be having his head cut off next to him. He would watch the door. That's all he would do, because they just do what they're told. Until a certain level of risk begins to happen, until it starts looking like they may suffer physically from what's happening around them, what they will do is they will just take off and leave. There's nothing really there for them to say, I'm going to stand here and defend this until I die. What they do have are orders from God, which come through the imams, et cetera, right? And as promises of heaven come through jihad. It comes through dying for Allah. That's the promise of heaven, which is better than the hell they're living in now over there.
Right.
So listen, so Donald Trump was right about Iraq. Take it over, do like we did in Japan, take it over, run the country, make it profitable, and then maybe then they will see that democracy works. Capitalism is the only answer in Iraq. Once they see that the Americans are running this country properly, then we will have a desire for democracy and Disneyland and ice cream and all this stuff, but we have to show them how to do it, take it over and do it right. And I say, folks, Donald Trump was right.
Yeah. Well, and so you said he had them eating out of his hands before the interview was over. How so?
Well,
I mean, were they actually getting it? Well,
listen, he was talking to them about the evils that Obama. he has a way of winning people over by, and he said to them, look, I like Barack Obama. I like him as a person, but he's a horrible president. And he outlined the horrors of the Obama presidency.
Right.
And I couldn't see the studio, but you could almost hear the light bulbs coming on over the heads of Stern and Quivers, because there was a dual thing going on there.
Right.
And you can hear in their voices that, yeah, by the end of the interview, they're like, yeah, we got to agree that the Obama administration has done horrible things for the country, and now the country is far worse off than it was when, in 2008.
Yeah. And
they came around to agreeing with that. And I really think that, hey, listen, I had to learn years ago, Carl, and I know that you have to plead the fifth on this, obviously, but I had to learn years ago that just because you have a brother in the Lord who is licensed to do something, that does not mean that he's the best person for it.
Right. Right.
When I had a fleet of trucks, I used to have a fleet of trucks, and I hired a guy who was in my church. He was a brother in the Lord, and he just got his truck driving license. And he's asked me for a job. I said, yes, okay, well, here's a truck, come work for me. And so he did. And this guy almost bankrupted me.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm just saying that, if you're going to hire a plumber, hire the best plumber.
Right.
And if the guy in your church is the best plumber or is good enough plumber, maybe he's good enough. But, I mean, don't hire people just because they're Christian.
Right.
I think America needs maybe not Donald Trump, but a Donald Trump. Or Mitt Romney's a Mormon, but he's a great businessman. He knows how to run things.
Well,
I think the world would have been better off with Mitt Romney, but I do think that America today, Carl, needs Donald Trump. I really believe that.
Right. I hear you. We need somebody who is a clear thinker, who has been successful in life, who knows what America is about, who has either run a business or who has run a governmental agency in a successful manner for a long time. We need someone who knows what they're doing. A community organizer doesn't cut it, as we found out. A sneaky, conniving lawyer from Arkansas who was first lady for a few years in one of the worst administrations we've seen until this administration, that doesn't cut it. Well, it depends on how I feel. Do what?
I said her husband was a born-again Christian.
Well, he sang in the choir. See, that's the point I was going to make. You made a brilliant point a moment ago. Jimmy Carter taught Sunday school in a Southern Baptist church. Bill Clinton sang in the choir, Emmanuel Baptist Church of Little Rock, Arkansas. And look what we got from them. And, I've said this before. I'm not wild about Mormonism. I've been very clear about that here over the radio when people ask me biblical questions. But the deal is this. The office of presidency should have nothing to do with a person's faith as far as how they're going to keep the law and obey the Constitution. Our founding fathers were brilliant. They set the Constitution and they set our legal system up and they set the checks and balances up if they're obeyed. And see, Obama's the lawless one. He has thumbed his nose at the law. But if our laws are obeyed, if the Constitution is obeyed, then it doesn't matter if you have an atheist in office, if they will abide by the law, obey the Constitution, respect our historical foundations, they could be a good president as far as running and managing the affairs of the nation. Now, I much prefer a born-again believer who's truly a godly man or a woman, absolutely. But when people get mad at me about saying this that I'm saying, oh, I can't believe you'd say that. My next question is, well, have you ever voted for president? Well, yeah. Well, who did you vote for? Please tell me who this born-again, Bible-believing, Jesus-loving, God-fearing, church-going Christian was, who was our president, who was a man of God through and through. Please tell me. I don't know of one in my lifetime.
Right. Very well said. Very well said. I couldn't have said it better.
Well, you're so kind. Listen, we're going to take a break because you've got more to say. You're going to tell us some amazing stuff about weight loss here in a moment, right?
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Okay.